You're watching Beyond 100 Days. Donald Trump has a catchy new slogan for why America needs a border wall, but it won't help and reopen the government.
And a new poll suggests more people support the Democrats in this standoff than support the president.
The Senate is voting on two bills to reopen government. One has border wall funding, one doesn't. Don't worry about the details of either because they won't pass. Mr. Trump sends a letter to Nancy Pelosi saying he will give his State of the Union address from Congress next Tuesday. She wants him to postpone it.
Also on the programme, the private jets are landing in Davos for the biggest networking event of the year, but this time there are some notable absentees, a reflection perhaps of the strains in Western democracies. And these are the live pictures from the Alaskan town of Fugitive, which is looking forward to its first glimpse of sunlight in 66 days.
Hello, I'm Katty Kay in Washington. Christian Fraser is in London. The US government shutdown slogans are getting catchier. Yesterday, the phrase of the day from the White House was "no cave." Today, President Trump has a rhyme. "Build a wall and crime will fall," he tweeted.
There's nothing particularly amusing there about the pain thousands of federal workers are suffering. They will miss another payday on Friday. And still, after 33 days, neither side in Washington looks ready for compromise. Who do they blame? Well, a new CBS poll shows more Americans want Mr. Trump to give in than want him to stand firm. 66% would rather a new budget was agreed without a wall.
But for the president's base, the wall is very important. He'll be meeting conservative leaders in the White House in the next hour, and they don't want him to give in. Let's speak to Mika Mosbacher, who's on the National Advisory Board for Trump's 2020 re-election campaign. Mika, thanks for coming in. Happy New Year. So good to see you again.
Happy New Year. You know,
everybody wants this government shutdown to end, but neither side wants to do what it takes to compromise. What could President Trump do that his base would tolerate on the issue of immigration that would be a compromise?
Well, first of all, Katty, what's going on in the U.S. is similar to what's going on in the U.K. Bipartisan legislation seems to be as tough as putting socks on a rooster. And what President Trump has done already is to extend a very reasonable offer. He's provided a 3-year temporary extension for the 700,000 DACA workers that are here in the United States.
But he got hit by conservatives on social media saying that was amnesty for illegal immigrants.
It's not amnesty, but President Trump did hint that if the Democrats were willing to come to the table and negotiate, that he would consider a permanent pathway for the DACA workers, or so-called dreamers in the United States. But he also has made other concessions in the form of an olive branch. $800 million for humanitarian relief on the border, additional judges, which we desperately need, additionally personnel, and other concessions. Our problem is that if the Democrats are going to stay in their corner and not come to the table and negotiate, not put forth a reasonable counteroffer, we have no starting point, and so the do-nothing Congress is now a do-nothing House.
Can he carry his base with him on the concessions that you've just outlined, and potentially on the idea of giving green cards, giving them legal working status to dreamers, to those kids who have been brought here illegally? Can he carry the base?
Yes, because I know that we have some very loud conservative voices in the base, but they are actually far right, not hard left, as what Nancy Pelosi, for example, is dealing with. I think that she is really kowtowing to her base, the extreme leftist wing of the Democratic Party. But the answer is that despite the polling, I think what's going on in this country is that individual Americans who are suffering, I have friends and family who are suffering through this, can't live paycheck, without a paycheck. I think that at the end of the day that the Democrats will pay the price going into 2020, especially those who are up for re-election, the centrist Democrats. So I think Nancy Pelosi has a problem, ultimately.
Mika, Happy New Year from London. Good to see you.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Let me put that poll back up again, just to show our viewers. 31% want him to stand firm. That is pretty much reflective. You will know, as someone who sits on the National Advisory Board for Trump 2020, you will know that's pretty much reflective of where the base is. You've got to expand beyond the base. You've got to get those floating voters. Does it not worry you that he can't seem to do that?
A recent poll came out showing that President Trump has gained several percentage points with Hispanics. So Hispanics also understand the importance of border security, and this is so much more than just about a wall. Democrats supported this legislation in the past. The immigration system in this country is broken. It has not been fixed in decades, not even when Obama had the majority in the House. And so I think that at this point, Americans would like to see a solution. They would like to get back to work. Again, it is up to the Democrats. If they sit in their corners and pontificate and blame, we're never going to be able to accomplish anything. The vote tomorrow is very important in the Senate because it is showing some movement. There is some room for negotiation. I agree with Caddy. I'm not optimistic that it will pass, but it will at least put those senators on record for what they are standing for. And I believe that Republicans, even Senator Romney, who's been so critical of President Trump, will stand together united, and that would be very important for our party.
You said at the top there that bipartisanship is as hard as putting socks on a rooster.
Oh, yeah.
This is not the best start to the Trump-Pelosi relationship. Is this indicative of what we're going to get for the next 2 years? Gridlock?
I certainly hope not, is why I support term limits. And you know, Senator Ted Cruz, who called our Congress a do-nothing Congress during the 2016 presidential election, has proposed a bill for term limits. I think that Nancy Pelosi does have a problem. I think with so many individuals entering the Democratic presidential race, we're going to see a split down the middle between some of the new energy. Ocasio-Cortez, she's too young to run, but she represents a very hard left line in the party, versus a more centrist individual such as Nancy Pelosi. And remember, 15 freshman Dems did not support her for Speaker. So I think she's got a bigger problem going into 2020. And they need a win, let's face it. They need an accomplishment, and bipartisan legislation would be a real step in the right direction.
Mika Mosbacher, thank you very much for joining us. Mika there from the Trump 2020 campaign. Senator Heidi Heitkamp from North Dakota was one of the Democratic senators who believed in reaching across the aisle.
Yeah, but she lost her re-election bid in the midterm elections. Here's a look at some of her statements while she was serving in Washington.
This truly is a remarkable government, and it's a remarkable system. But it's always been remarkable because it's not just the wealthy and powerful that have a voice in this body. With us comes the opportunity to speak for the most disadvantaged Americans.
The Senate only works if we enable it to. That means each of us need to do our job, and we may not always agree, but I know senators can work together, as I have, to get results. And I know that gridlock and partisanship does not have to rule the day.
Now, former Senator Heidi Heitkamp joined us from Fargo, North Dakota. Senator, thank you very much for joining the program. You just heard there a supporter of President Trump say that Democrats are going to pay the price for this government shutdown in 2020, that centrist Democrats, people like yourself, won't be re-elected because of this government shutdown.
That's what you call pumping sunshine. When you go and look at the spread in Real Clear Politics, the president's favorables versus unfavorables have dramatically split. And even in the poll that he cites the most often, which is Rasmussen, he is down in double digits. He is seeing a very serious erosion as a result of this impasse. And, you know, at the end of the day, the American public will look, and the person who gets blamed is the person who's sitting in the White House, because they expect that person to broker the deal. This is a guy who got elected saying, look at me, I have a book called The Art of the Deal. We aren't seeing any art of the deal. We aren't seeing any ability to bring people together to create some kind of unifying governmental expression of where we had. And it's because we're now governing by slogan instead of by real issues. We can solve this impasse if we look at border security as a, kind of public policy issue. What does that look like? What can it look like? Where does a wall work? Where doesn't a wall work? Let's just do the job of government. And people where I live, which is the middle of the country, are incredibly frustrated because they see the impacts of this impasse, but they also wonder, what's wrong with the people in Washington, D.C., and why can't they govern? And, you know, this is hurting the reputation not only of the president, but it is hurting the reputation of the government.
You know, Senator, that in any negotiation, both sides have to compromise. So what specifically would you be advising Nancy Pelosi to compromise on? Would you tell her, for example, that actually after 33 days, it is time for Democrats to give the president money for a border wall in order to reopen government so that workers can get their paychecks again?
I think that the compromise that's on the table right now, which is a temporary patch to this problem, is the one that was originally advanced by Lindsey Graham, the Republican senator from South Carolina. Steny Hoyer said who is the majority leader, Nancy's right-hand person, he said if the Senate passes something, we'll take serious consideration. Here's the opportunity for everybody to get on board with opening up government for a couple, 3 weeks, have the experts sit down and begin to negotiate on a public policy basis, not on a rhetoric or slogan basis, what border security is going to look like. And when you opened up your segment, you talked about the loss of moderates. And I think we're seeing what's happening when you see this huge partisan split without people in the middle trying to broker deals. And, you know, when we did this, when the government shut down in 2013, it really was the centrists who came together and fashioned a compromise. I think that's an opportunity that Congress has again to pull some people together. But, you know, they vote and they go home. I'd suggest that they vote. That didn't work. We vote again on another proposal and get this done. It is having dramatic effects here.
Senator, Cathy and I closely followed your fortunes on midterm evening up there in North Dakota. Joe Manchin hung on in West Virginia, John Tester hung on in Montana, but yourself, Claire McCaskill in Missouri and Joe Donnelly in Indiana, you all went by the wayside. The moderates in the Democratic Party in red states. Is that a sign of the times that modern Democrats, moderate Democrats, can't exist in red states?
I think we used to say all politics is local. Now the slogan is all politics are cultural and they're national. And so many people say, why do people in your state vote against their interest? I said, you have to understand what they think their interests are from their perspective. And even in North Dakota, in spite of, a hard Trump state, a lot of people are questioning whether we need a wall from sea to shining sea. A lot of us who have been down there know that's totally impractical. But the president has promised a wall. Of course, Mexico was going to pay for it, but he believes that this is the one thing that he still has remaining that energizes his base. Well, let me tell you, the rest of the country sits back and says, we want that guy who said, I'm the guy who did the art of the deal and I can make things work. Well, let's see the art of the deal. Let's see you pull people together. And, I think that's a promise unkept, that he is going to be somebody who can get things done.
Senator, how is this affecting people in North Dakota, people who were your voters until recently?
Well, obviously, the agricultural sector is being very affected. This is the time of the year when we need those FSA offices, which is the government offices that assist farmers. We need them open so farmers can understand the new farm bill that we just passed, so farmers can make their planting decisions and they know that they have a legitimate safety net. They also don't know, because so much of the government shut down, what's really happening with China and soybeans. And I know you guys covered the soybean discussion here in North Dakota during the campaign, but we don't know where our markets are. We don't know where we're doing well. We see in the agriculture sector this shutdown affecting farmers' decisions. But probably the most dramatic place you see it is on the Indian reservations. When we talk about the tribes, and a lot of people probably in your country think, well, these are welfare programs or these are general assistance programs. What this is, these are treaty obligations. And in almost all the treaties that govern the relationship between the federal government and our tribes in North Dakota provide for health care, they provide for education, they provide for housing. All of those things are by the wayside. And so right now, where a huge portion of the native economy is based on these government programs, that is being absolutely decimated. And so that one person who gets a paycheck that may be supporting 6 family members isn't getting that paycheck. And we're already stretched so thin. This is the highest rate of poverty in this country on our Indian reservations. We can ill afford this kind of disruption to their economy. But yet, here we sit. Right. And what's really interesting to me is when you look at the priority, I just want to say they sent workers back to the IRS so that they could, in fact, issue the income tax refunds in this filing season. We need our workers back on the reservations, and we need those folks to get a paycheck.
Yeah, a reminder, so many
Senator
people
Heidi
being affected across the country. Senator Heidi Heitkamp, good to talk to you. Do come on the programme again soon. Thank you very much. My spies tell me, Catty, that you were in the hairdressers this morning. And I know that you come across some influential people in the hairdressers, not least Nancy Pelosi, who was there. So what's she saying?
You know, it's interesting. I asked her whether they're getting calls from people saying, look, you know, we sympathise with the Democratic position from Democrats, but you have to reopen government in order, as Senator Heitkamp is saying there, to get the paychecks to people who work for the government. She said that they are getting some of those calls, and particularly in more conservative districts, but overwhelmingly the calls that are coming into Democrats' offices are asking them to stand firm on the issue of the wall and not to capitulate. The Democrats' argument basically is that if we capitulate on this instance, then the president will hold us hostage again over every time we disagree with him. He will shut down the government and we will have lost the last time, and so he will expect us to cave again. That's what they are feeling at the moment. She sounds pretty adamant that they're not going to reopen government, that they are not going to vote to do it, and they're not going to be held hostage. So this standoff, 33 days in, this standoff continues. Interesting, actually, that segue about globalization and the wealthy and trade issues, because the great and the wealthy are in Davos again for the World Economic Forum. But this year, several world leaders are missing. Theresa May has stayed home to deal with Brexit. Donald Trump has skipped Davos to deal with the shutdown. Emmanuel Macron is also at home facing a populist backlash against big business.
Yeah, their absence spurred our next guest to remark this on Twitter, that this year the ratio of dictatorships to democracies in Davos is now seriously skewed towards the bad guys. The American-born British financier Bill Browder, who lives under permanent threat from Russia, joins us from Davos. Bill, good to have you with us. Let me just pick you up on your tweet. I know it might feel, with the absence of some of the Western leaders, that the bad guys are taking precedence there in Davos. Is that factually correct? Because I see that the Japanese leader is there, the German Chancellor is there.
Well, you also have the entire Saudi contingent. You have lots and lots of people from Russia, from Putin, the Putin regime. You've got people from Kazakhstan and various other dictatorships. And you know, the interesting thing about Davos is that while its sort of the slogan is committed to make the world a better place, there's a lot of people in Davos who are committed to making their own subjects a lot worse off. And so I see it all over the place, and it definitely doesn't feel very comfortable among these people that I describe as bad guys.
Yeah, it is indicative of the troubles in Western democracies at the moment that so many of the leaders aren't there. And when you consider what they're battling at home, it's somewhat curious that the theme for the conference, for the gathering, is globalism 4.0, which seems oddly out of touch with this wave of populism and economic nationalism that we're seeing around the globe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the slogan should be, how do we fight nationalism, populism, chauvinism, and racism, because that is what the issue of the day is. And you know, and Davos has never really been known to be a sort of honest place of honest assessment. It's a business conference where they invite a lot of very wealtly people from
sorry to interrupt, but isn't it deeper than that? Doesn't it just show, when you have a headline like that, globalism 4.0, doesn't it show how out of touch the elites are with many of the concerns that people have around the West?
Well, I don't think it's about the elites. I think it's about the people who organize the conference. Having said that, the people who do come here are very out of touch. You have I read that there were 1,500 private jets parked at nearby airports, shuttling in all these people to talk about things like climate change. And so, indeed, it's a bit of a hypocritical situation here.
Mr. Browder, let me play devil's advocate. It's easy to slam Davos because of the 0.1% are there. They fly in their jets. They have champagne parties. It is the elites talking to the elites. So does something get achieved at this conference that is worthwhile? Is there some upside beyond just the business community and their own profits and their shareholders that you think makes it worthwhile, for example, for you to be there?
Well, the reason I'm here is I'm an activist that is fighting against Vladimir Putin's regime and trying to impose sanctions on Russia. And I come here because there's a very rich mix of government officials, leaders of media organizations, and business people. And with that mix, I have an opportunity to make my point and to make it strongly and to make it with people who might be able to make a difference. And so from my perspective, I can do good and I can advance my agenda of trying to contain and stop Russia from doing its bad. So it's not all bad here in Davos, but a lot of people here are not here for altruistic reasons. They're here to make money.
I was there last year because President Trump was there, and the mood was giddy about the world economy. You had all of these CEOs touting the fact that the markets were rising, that their profits were doing extremely well. Does the fact that you have no Justin Trudeau, no Theresa May, no Emmanuel Macron, no Donald Trump, is it casting a bit of a pall on things there, or not really?
Well, it's not so much their absence, but the reason for their absence, which is cast a pall. You've got the U.S. government shut down. You've got a trade war with China. You have Brexit and the potential catastrophe of a hard Brexit. And of course, you have all the problems in France. And this is all very indicative of an uncertain, scary world. And I think that those reasons certainly do cast a pall over the business people in Davos who are all just like crossing their fingers and hoping that the party punch bowl stays full.
Bill Browder, good to get your thoughts there from Davos. Thank you very much for being with us. Yes, it is ironic, isn't it, Catty, that Sir David Attenborough and Prince William were opening the Davos gathering yesterday, calling for business leaders to get on with the practical solutions needed to prevent environmental damage. 1,500 private planes jetted in this week. That's a record for the week. Hardly in keeping with the green agenda.
No, but what is interesting is how they all still go, right? I mean, the leaders are not going. There are lots of reasons not to go. For example, that 1,500 private jets are going in, and yet you still have people like Bill Browder. You'll still have a slew of environmental activists who are turning up at Davos and joining that conference. Every year I wonder whether it's still going to be relevant, and every year lots and lots of people still seem to think that it is from different ends of the political spectrum.
Nearly into its 50th year.
Yeah, let's have a quick look at other news now. U.S. President Donald Trump says he recognizes that Venezuelan opposition leader Juan Guaido is the interim president, I should say. Tens of thousands of Venezuelans are taking to the streets in protest against President Maduro. Mr. Guaido, who has called for the demonstrations, declared himself acting leader in Caracas today. Activist groups claim that at least 4 people were killed overnight ahead of those demonstrations.
A leading Brexit supporter, the MP Jacob Rees-Mogg, says he believes Theresa May's deal could be reformed to win round opponents. The deadlock has been over the Irish border and the so-called backstop arrangement. Today's comments have fueled speculation that Mr Rees-Mogg and other Brexiteers could now be persuaded to support the Prime Minister's deal.
The government of Zimbabwe has defended the crackdown by its security forces following violent protests over rising fuel prices. A spokesman told the BBC, when things get out of hand, a bit of firmness is needed. Zimbabwe's Human Rights Commission has accused those security forces of using systematic torture against protesters.
Italy's far-right Interior Minister Matteo Salvini has said the European Union's mission to combat people smuggling in the Central Med will have to close unless its rules are changed. Mr Salvini reiterated his objections to migrants rescued in the course of Operation Sophia being disembarked in Italy.
Okay, today the people of Utkavik. I knew I was going to mess that up. Utkavik. Alaska will turn, that used to be called Browder, we will turn their faces to the horizon for some sunlight. It's the first time in 66 days. The town, formerly known as Barrow, population of 4,300, is one of the northernmost communities in the world at a latitude of 71.2 degrees north.
Yes, and this, we believe, is the webcam in Utkavik. They last saw the sun on November the 18th. Today, A fleeting segment of the sun will appear in the south. Beginning at 1:04 p.m. local time. It will sink below the horizon about an hour later at 2:14 p.m. And only the solar disk, so not even direct sunlight, just a little slither of light. Catty.
What's it like to live when you don't see the sun for 66 days and then you see it for a little sliver of it for 1 hour and 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Wow, they are tough up there.
Yeah, you have to put your shades on, I reckon. Utqiagvik, what does it mean? Do you know?
Go on. Fun fact of the day. I can feel it coming.
It's Inuit for digging up root vegetables, digging up potatoes.
Yeah, I knew that.
And then you carry them in a barrow, which used to be the old name. Anyway, this is Beyond 100 Days from the BBC.
And coming up for viewers on the BBC News Channel and BBC World News, the teenager at the centre of this controversial viral video has spoken publicly to defend his behaviour.
And some of the UK's biggest Instagram stars agreed to disclose when they are being paid to promote products we see online. That's all still to come.
Good evening. A few different types of winter weather across the UK today. For some, there have been some further wintry showers. For others, have a look at this. Beautiful blue skies there in Derbyshire. And for some spots, fog lingered all day long, holding those temperatures down below freezing. Now, what's being picked up here on the satellite picture down across the spine of the UK is actually lying snow. We've had some cloud across the southeastern corner. That's been bringing some wintry showers, more extensive cloud across western fringes. We'll keep that extra cloud in the west as we go through tonight. Some further wintry showers across parts of northwest Scotland, and also this little line of wintry flurries, some rain, some sleet and some snow drifting southwards across northern England could give a further covering in places. Where we have that extra cloud in the west, not as cold, but for most of us it is another very cold and frosty night. And from East Anglia across northern England up into Scotland, there is the potential for some ice. And during tomorrow morning's rush hour, this little line of rain, sleet and snow drifting across the Midlands into East Anglia and the southeast could cause one or two travel issues and make things a little bit slippery. It'll leave quite a cloudy day across the southeastern corner. For the rest of eastern England, eastern Scotland will see some sunshine. Further west, generally more in the way of clouds, some outbreaks of patchy rain, and it will mostly be rain because in these western areas those temperatures will be climbing. Further east, it is another chilly day. But as we move out of Thursday into Friday, we bring this warm front further eastwards across the British Isles. That'll bring a bit of patchy rain, but as the name warm front suggests, it will introduce some warmer or at least some milder air. The cold air, you'll notice though, is not too far away. But Friday will be a very different feeling day. Double-digit temperatures in some places. A lot of cloud around, some patchy rain. Bit of brightness as well, especially to the east of high ground. But 10 degrees in Newcastle, 11 for Cardiff and for Plymouth. But we'll see rain pepping up across western Scotland late in the day. And during Friday night into Saturday, we bring this band of heavy rain southwards with some strong and gusty winds. And on the back edge of the rain band, notice we start to see some snow, especially over high ground. That's because as that rain pushes southwards, we open the door once again to the return of some cold air. And once that cold air returns, it stays with us on Sunday, also a windy day, and it stays chilly into next week.
Some days of the week are just different. Upgrade your tech, apps and gadget knowledge. Click this weekend on the BBC News Channel.
Wherever you are, follow the story with BBC News. Use your smart speaker and ask for BBC News. Get headlines as they happen, with live updates. And if you're out and about, you can watch the BBC News Channel live from the app. Follow the story, wherever you are. News.
This is Beyond 100 Days. I'm Catty Kane, Washington. Christian Fraser is in London.
Our top stories. Donald Trump rejects calls to delay his State of the Union address because of the government shutdown. President Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has postponed his testimony to Congress, claiming the president has issued threats against his family.
And coming up in the next half hour, are tribal politics slowing down the US and the UK? We look at the polarization of issues and what that means for the functioning of democratic governments. And so-called influencers on Instagram agree to disclose what they're being paid for those posts. President Trump is pushing ahead with his plans to deliver his State of the Union address next Tuesday, despite requests from Nancy Pelosi that he postpone it because of the continued government shutdown. In a letter to the Speaker, the president said, "Thank you for your letter of January the 3rd, 2019, sent to me long after the shutdown began, inviting me to address the nation on January the 29th.
It would be so very sad for our country," he goes on, "if the State of the Union were not delivered on time, on schedule and, very importantly, on location." Ron Christie, former advisor to George W. Bush, is with us. Hello to you, Ron. You're going to give us the friendly reminder that the president cannot just show up at the House and speak on January the 29th. It's not as simple as that.
Good evening to you, Christian. It's never as simple as it seems. By tradition, the Speaker of the House invites the President of the United States to come to the Capitol and deliver the State of the Union address. It's important to recognize that 26 of our 45 presidents have done this in person and several have not. But the notion that we have these dueling letters between the Speaker of the House, who is in charge of the legislative branch of one chamber, and the President of the United States, I find truly extraordinary.
I mean, and also, Ron, the Senate has to pass a resolution, the House has to pass a resolution, both of those resolutions have to pass in order for the president to come. But presumably, if Nancy Pelosi says, Democrats, do not pass this resolution, it doesn't pass. So what does he do? Come and knock on the door and it's shut and the lights are off?
Not unlike the House of Commons, I suppose, where the Queen's coming at the door. Look. I think that President Trump and his allies want to find a way out of this. They don't want to appear to be the ones to have the government shutdown going on. With the Speaker of the House sitting behind him, she could be growling at him. The Democrats could be booing at him in the audience. That image is not a good one. I've also heard from friends in the White House that the president is also entertaining the notion of just going to the Senate chamber. Could you imagine that? We've never done that before. Could he and would he do it? It's all interesting to see all the options on the table.
Ron, let's ask about another story, and that's Michael Cohen, the president's former lawyer, who was meant to testify before Congress on February the 7th about his dealings with Mr. Trump, particularly over payments to a former porn star and what he knew about that. He has now said he's not going to testify because he says his family is under threat from the White House. What's going on?
Another extraordinary story here. You've heard from his counsel, in fact, that Michael Cohen feels like he's being terrorized by the President of the United States. What I believe we have here, Caddy, is the fact that someone who does not want to go up and testify under oath under penalty of perjury on February 7th, what better way to get out of congressional testimony than say that Mr. Giuliani, the president's personal attorney, and, of course, Donald Trump himself are intimidating this potential witness. Clever by half, but the political notion here is significant. Neither Donald Trump nor Cohen want him to go up there to testify. The president undoubtedly doesn't want to be embarrassed, and Mr. Cohen, again, I don't believe wants to perjure himself under oath.
OK, Ron, stay with us, because earlier in the week we talked about the reaction to a viral video showing a confrontation between Kentucky teenagers and a Native American elder. The teenagers were initially disparaged for disrespecting the older man.
But several versions of the video have been circulating. You might have seen them on social media, and it does complicate the narrative somewhat. Nick Sanderman, the teenager there at the centre of the screen, has spoken to NBC's Today Show and defended his behaviour.
As far as standing there, I had every right to do so. My position is that I was not disrespectful to Mr. Phillips. I respect him. I'd like to talk to him. I mean, in hindsight, I wish we could have walked away and avoided the whole thing. But I can't say that I'm sorry for listening to him and standing there.
It's a good story for the White House, this, Ron, because predominantly the liberal media jumped on this story. They took a view on it and it's been walked back since. All right, there is other videos which have appeared which complicate the issue, but it's the very fact that the liberal media went chasing after it that probably plays to the sort of line that the White House is taking on it?
I think that's right, Christian. Look, you have a number of young white students wearing the Make America Great Again hat. It fits into the narrative that these are young racists from Kentucky, from Covington, Kentucky, right near Cincinnati, Ohio. But yet and still, we see what actually happened. They were confronted by a group of black folks who were yelling at them. They were confronted by this Native American gentleman who was banging a drum. And so the rush to judgment, I think, is going to go right to what Donald Trump always says, hashtag fake news and, made up conspiracy theories. And the President of the United States is enjoying the media walking this back.
OK, I'm going to push back on a little bit on this characterization that it was the liberal media, because actually Fox News was pretty tough on these kids too. The Catholic Archdiocese in Covington in northern Kentucky was also pretty tough on these kids too. I don't know if this is just about the liberal media. I think this is more of a broad indication about the fact that we live in a time where one little bit of information comes out, everybody rushes to judgment, and they don't wait for all of the facts to come in.
Fair point, Caddy. In fact, the March for Life, the reason why these students were in town in the first place, actually came out and condemned the students shortly thereafter. So the very nature of why they were there in the first place. Look, everyone looks bad in this. Right wing, left wing. We should not rush to judgment. And it just shows you the responsibility that the media has, and those who are on social media have to make sure that they get the story right. And in this case, they didn't.
OK. Ron Christie, thank you very much for coming in. Police searching the English Channel for a missing Cardiff City footballer say they're focusing on the possibility that the plane he was travelling in landed on the water and that he and the pilot made it into a life raft.
Emiliano Sala was flying in a light aircraft from France to Cardiff when it disappeared from radar screens on Monday night. He just signed for Cardiff City and was due to start training at the club this week. Sean Lloyd reports.
A second day of searching the waters off the coast of the Channel Islands, but there have been no sightings. A number of rescue teams have been working today, but hopes of finding the men are fading. The aircraft was piloted by David Ibbotson from North Lincolnshire. This is the plane that Emiliano Sala was travelling in. It's registered in the US, but is thought to have British owners. It was filmed by the BBC in 2015 as part of a report about light aircraft. On Monday evening, it was carrying the Argentinian striker from France to Cardiff, where he was about to join his new club. The 28-year-old recorded a voice message to friends from on board in which he spoke of safety concerns.
Estoy acá arriba del avión que parece que se está por caer a pedazos. Si en una hora y media no tiene novedades mías, no sé si van a mandar a alguien a buscarme porque no me van a encontrar, pero ya saben.
At home in Argentina, his family are desperately waiting for news.
The hours go by and it makes me think of the worst. I just want them to find him. The last thing they said is that the communication ended when they crossed the channel.
Emiliano Sala signed a £15 million deal to play for Cardiff City, a club record. Today, the management confirmed that the club had not booked the flight from France to South Wales, explaining that the footballer had made his own arrangements. Outside the stadium, more flowers and messages are being left. The team and fans are in shock. They'd been looking forward to his first game here.
We were so excited to see him, and he's obviously not here, so we are very sad.
He never wore the shirt for Cardiff City, but once you're a Bluebird, you'll always be a Bluebird, and he's signed on the dotted line as a Bluebird.
His former club Nantes have changed their Twitter profile to include a picture of the star, and outside the ground, flowers for a player who was popular there. Air accident investigators have begun their inquiry, but finding the plane will be crucial. Sean Lloyd, BBC News, Cardiff.
Yeah, that does not look good. Some news just coming in here. We talked about the State of the Union and whether the president would go to Capitol Hill. Nancy Pelosi has now responded to the president's letter with a letter of her own. And in it, basically, she says that resolution we talked about that the House would have to pass. She says she's not even contemplating holding that resolution. She says to him, I look forward to welcoming you to the House on a mutually agreeable date for this address. when government has been reopened. So that's from Nancy Pelosi to Donald Trump, i.e. you're not invited. So let's see what actually happens. I looked at the running order of our programme this afternoon, and it looked depressingly similar to the running order yesterday, and that is because politics on both sides of the Atlantic has been brought to a virtual standstill in recent weeks. The UK and the US are in gridlock over single issues. In the United States, it's Trump's wall and the shutdown. In the UK, it's Brexit.
Each day we seem to be debating the same intractable problems. Is there any hope of compromise, some pragmatism, or is politics in the US and the UK now so deeply tribal that these two great powers are in real danger of slipping behind the others? Here to discuss it is Sophia Gaston. She's the Director of the Centre of Social and Political Risk. Welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
What is it that these two major economies aren't doing because of these twin issues, Brexit and the wall? Are they truly slipping behind other countries?
Well, I think it's important to think of the Brexit referendum and the 2016 election as a kind of steam valve for a whole host of economic and social issues, which really had been off the agenda for a long time. And then in the aftermath of these votes, we saw new forms of identity emerging. So you were either for Trump or against Trump. You were either leave or you remain. And then what we've seen in the 2.5 years since is that the political parties and these identities have become intrinsically linked. So the two major parties have absolutely doubled down on both sides of these divides. And we've also seen their supporters and their support bases doubling down. Now, what has happened as a result of that is that the political incentive for compromise and consensus building has been fundamentally eroded.
So what you're saying is that maybe it's cathartic in some way to sort of bring to the fore things that were bubbling underneath, although some people would say the EU and leaving the EU was never top of the list of people's priorities. But it's not been cathartic, because what it's actually done is it's made us more divided within society, and our politics reflects that.
Yes, I think whatever you think of the outcomes of the 2016 election or the Brexit referendum, they did bring some issues that really needed to be debated and discussed onto the agenda. The problem is that everything that's happened since has absolutely eroded the capacity to have any kind of nuanced or pragmatic discussion about these issues. They've also meant that we can't actually address the issues at stake. There is a kind of paralysis at the heart of both of our political systems at the moment. And I think there are real reasons to be concerned about the future health of our democracies. Because when I do focus groups, it's clear that all of these fractious kinds of language, this animosity and acrimonious nature of our politics, is really seeping down into the way in which ordinary people view our political institutions, view the political systems, and also the way in which they start to see each other as citizens. And that's really problematic if we need to think of ourselves as one community for our liberal democracies to function.
Okay.
So, Sophia, I was just wondering whether it's actually that no other government business is getting done, because in the US people are so focused on the shutdown and in the UK they're so focused on Brexit. Or is it that other things are happening behind the scenes, but because they are not the issues that are headline news, people aren't talking about them on television, they're not talking about them on social media, and so we don't know that they're happening. They're not getting attention.
I think it's true that there are small elements of progress on both sides. I mean, they're not in complete paralysis or shutdown, but I think this is where the UK and the US start to become quite different scenarios, because in the US, I do think there is a really political motivation behind the paralysis, whereas in the UK, I think it's more the task at hand. Brexit is such a monumental ask of any kind of government. It's not just that politics is in paralysis, it's that the civil service is having to go through, thousands of statutes. Every single government department is affected by this. So I think they are quite different beasts in that respect.
Sophia, good to see you. Thank you very much for coming in. It's interesting, yesterday, the UK and Changing Europe, Anand's group, who we sometimes have on the programme, Catty, they were looking at polling around the country, and they've decided that actually people now identify either as leavers or remainers more than they identify with political parties. We've become so entrenched and so obsessed by Brexit that we now identify ourselves as either a leaver or remainer rather than Labour or Conservative or Liberal Democrat.
Yeah, that is not happening here. There is not cross cross-party support for President Trump or cross-party support for immigration or for the wall. It is very much a party divided issue. And in that respect, I think Sophia is right. Also that just in Britain it's partly that the bandwidth is taken up with this massive negotiation that the government has to go through. So there isn't the bandwidth to focus on other things. This is Beyond 100 Days, and still to come on the programme, some of the world's biggest Instagram influencers have agreed to make it clear when they're being paid to endorse a product. But is it stricter regulation that's needed?
A man wanted for the manslaughter of a 24-year-old woman who was thrown out of his speedboat on the River Thames is now being held in police custody in the Georgian capital, Tbilisi. Jack Shepherd, who's 31, had gone on the run before being convicted. Our correspondent, Sarah Campbell, reports.
There
had been rumoured sightings of him as far afield as Turkey and Thailand. But after months on the run, Jack Shepherd finally handed himself in the former Soviet state of Georgia. A fugitive from justice, before speaking to the police, he gave an interview to a local television station.
Yes, my name is Jack Shepherd.
He said he was involved in a tragic accident in 2015 in which a lady called Charlotte Brown tragically died. Charlotte was just 24 when she was killed. She was on a first date with Jack Shepherd. He'd taken her for a meal and then out onto the Thames on his speedboat. Charlotte took this footage on her mobile phone. They'd been drinking, he was speeding. He let her take controls, the boat crashed and overturned. Charlotte died. Shepherd, who's now 31, was arrested but vanished before his trial at the Old Bailey even began. He was convicted in his absence of manslaughter by gross negligence and sentenced to 6 years in prison. In a statement this evening, Graham Brown, Charlotte's father, thanked all those who'd supported the family and said that he felt very, very emotional at the fact his daughter will get some justice. After months on the run, Jack Shepherd is now in the custody of Georgian police, with extradition proceedings set to bring him back to the UK. Sarah Campbell, BBC News.
Some of the UK's biggest Instagram stars have agreed that in future they will clearly disclose when they are paid to promote products online. The Competition and Markets Authority, the CMA, has secured formal commitments from 16 stars who they believe were posting undisclosed ads in their social media accounts.
Alexa Chung, Rita Ora and Ellie Goulding are among them. They are so-called key influencers. Between them, they have over 30 million followers, and that is gold dust to big brands. Joining us from Warwick is Leo Mandela, known on Instagram as Gully Guy Leo, and who has over 700,000 followers. Congratulations. And in Nottingham is Rohan Maida, who's the managing director of PMYB, one of the biggest agencies managing Instagram influence is in the UK.
Right, well, let me start with you, Rohan, first of all, because you are the person that encourages these stars to go out there and put some advertising online. Is it as simple as maybe putting hashtag ad on? Would that solve the problem?
Okay, so in quite a lot of situations, yes, it is as simple as putting hashtag ad. The main point of all of this is that every single time an influencer is paid to promote a product or a service, it's very important that those promotions are disclosed properly. So when consumers are watching these videos that these influencers are creating or looking at their Instagram feed, they are aware when this person that they admire and they follow and who shapes their opinions is actually being paid to promote or endorse a product or a service, compared to when they actually are doing it because they really genuinely like that product or service. And that disclosure is incredibly important.
OK, Leo, I read that the TV star Kylie Jenner, who has more than 116 million followers on Instagram, 25 million on Twitter and 21 million on Facebook, so that's quite a lot of followers, she earned £750,000 from one post. How much do you earn?
Well, that is something I've been taught not to discuss, the money that I earn ever. So that's something you'd have to go to my manager.
Okay, go on then.
Yeah, it's an all right amount, but it's something I wouldn't ever say publicly. It's something that my manager talks about.
But you get paid?
Yeah, there's a paid amount within the post, which is what is good about it, and that's why it kind of helps as much as I enjoy it. But that's something that I'd never talk about the figures.
Okay, so you write a blog. Who typically comes towards you and says, you know what, Leo, stick this on your site, and we'll send a check in the post? Who would do that?
It's not a blog. It's more like Instagram page where I wear like what I want to wear and stuff. And usually it's brands. A lot of brands approach me, but I only ever go for brands that like I enjoy and like I would wear normally, because my page, if you look at it, is so like authentic and organic. If you look at it, it's just stuff that I like. So there's a lot of brands to approach, but I only ever choose the ones that I genuinely like to wear.
So I think Christian was just revealing his lack of being an Instagram influencer there, Leo. People I know who are in your position, it's not just the fact that they get money. Of course, they also get sent merchandise from brands as well. Is it hard work, what you do? How many posts are you putting out a day?
Well, it is hard work in a sense, but also it's something that I've always enjoyed, so I don't really see it as work and like, oh, I have to do this. But a lot of the time I'll post like 2 posts a week, and it's just about kind of going out, finding the best background. I mean, if you look to my Instagram, you'd see that that's kind of what I do, the background thing and like matching outfits and stuff. But yeah, it's like going out. It's not hard work, but it does take a lot of effort to kind of get the perfect picture, which I post.
And what do you do to let your followers know whether you've been paid or not paid?
Well, I never tag brands on my page when I'm wearing it normally. So a lot of the time I will tag the brand if it's been a paid promotion, because I like to keep it like organic, and even though there's still hint there that it has been paid by the tag, because I never usually do that, I like to kind of keep it myself and as sleek as possible.
Yeah, Rohan, I mean, the fundamental concept here is that people buy from people they trust and admire. And what the CMA is saying is that the people we trust and admire are pulling the wool over our eyes.
Yes, so PNYB genuinely tends to go the extra mile in ensuring that all of their ads are disclosed. So we would, for example, as you mentioned before, put hashtag ad, because we like to keep within the regulation. And although tagging a brand may be non-normal, it's actually important that on a post-by-post basis, we disclose that when, and you're right in saying that the fundamental concept of influencer marketing is that the people that we trust and admire are influencing their followers to act in a certain way, to purchase a certain product. So that disclosure is incredibly important. It's like in a TV spot. You know that when the advert's on TV and there's a celebrity on a TV spot, you know that that is an advert because it is very obvious. But on social media, it's very different, and it's important that consumers do not believe that a post or an endorsement that has been paid for by a brand, is a genuine endorsement, you know?
Leo, final question. You are 16 years old. Is this going to be your career?
Well, that's the question. I mean, I am starting to go a lot into DJing. Music is a passion I've always wanted to do, but this is kind of something that I'm doing right now. I'm focusing all my time on, but I want to stay within the creative world and do something creative, but I'm not 100% if this is going to be forever, because I know things don't last forever. And a big part of what this is my age. So as I grow older, I've kind of got to grow into something else as well.
Leo and Rohan, thank you very much for joining us. I cannot tell you how Poppy would be so jealous.
I'm slightly worried because I only have a modest number of Twitter followers, but I think I might be unwittingly promoting the life-changing benefits of Burnley Football Club, and maybe I need to disclose that.
Yeah. I'm not even sure you are on Instagram. Today doesn't just mark the 33rd day of the shutdown of the US government or the 65 days until Brexit, arguably far less important. It is also 2 years since this programme came on air for the first time.
Yes, officially, Beyond 100 Days has become beyond 2 years, which is beyond belief. In fact, I think the accountants, Catty, don't even know we're still on air. The budget for this programme ran out in March 2017. But in the off chance that they don't know we're still on air, I splashed out today And I got us this. Have I got it? Oh,
Looks
no.
like a
Which way
giant
round
kind
is
of
it?
silver snake.
Look at that. It's actually, I have to be a bit careful because it's filled with helium. It's got a rock on the bottom here as well. So happy birthday, Catty. Happy birthday, Ron, if you're still there.
Ron is definitely still here. It looks like a kind of rather weird giant silver snake. I have something too to say happy birthday to you, Christian Fraser, all the way here. There is a little two here. I'm a bit worried that if I... There you go. That's it. No more. Well, we'll have to go back to our homemade graphics then, because we're clearly not going to be able to afford any more. And I think we need Ron Christie in this because we are very happy, Ron, that you have spent the last 2 years coming on this programme. It has been one of the pleasures for us of doing Beyond 100 Days.
Honor and pleasure is all mine, Caddy. Christian, happy birthday to you both.
Thank you.
Yeah, we don't look a day older, right? Any of us. None. Not at all. Happy birthday. Thanks all of you for watching, and we will be back here tomorrow with Happy Birthday 2 years plus 1 day. See you back here tomorrow, guys.
Thanks for watching.